So, to all 3.5 of you who may actually still be looking at this, here's part 5 or part 4. Yeah, please watch 1, 2, and 3 first. Actually, scratch that. Don't watch any, but get a life. uh, for those of you who have, welcome back. Okay, I want to briefly revisit 2 Samuel 12:7 here because it was a point of contention. Um, here's how I read it, and I validate this reading with the objective standard of interpretation that I gave earlier. So here's how it works. Okay, let me just read the text. Um, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel. Okay, God Himself is speaking here. I anointed thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul. And I gave thee thy master's house and thy master's wives into thy bosom. Okay, now the principle I proposed said that, whatever God says He did, okay, that didn't violate a law. Okay, so since God can commit no sin, what God did violated no prescriptive laws in force at the time. So, God is basically gave Saul's wives to David as wives, as sexual partners. If you read later on, I mean, this is a family channel. I'm not going to read later on in this particular speech here. But if you read later on, it's pretty obvious that what we're talking about here is a sexual relation. And the context for this is David is gone and he's killed somebody and taken their wife. So what God is complaining about is God saying, oh, look, I gave you all these wives already, all these sexual partners already. Why did you have to go get greedy and kill somebody and take their wife as your sexual partner too? And so yeah, I think this can really be viewed as God actually endorsing polygamy. Now, if you want to argue against this, you got to show some place where Leviticus or Deuteronomy actually, in a strong voice, prohibit polygyny. I don't think there is one. Now, in point of fact, the Pentateuch laws clearly presuppose a polygynous society. I mean, all through there's things saying, if you've got a wife or you've got two wives, or if a man has, two wives, he shouldn't favor one over the other, blah, 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 things like this, right? So, what should we be looking for? We shouldn't be looking for a text that says, thou shalt marry two women. I mean, it's not a sin if you don't marry any women at all. I mean, God really doesn't say, it's your choice how many women you have. But what we should be looking for is something that clearly says polygyny is wrong. Okay, and I don't think you can do it in the Old Testament. The best shot you had was Deuteronomy 17:17. Okay, this I think is your best case. So let's take a closer look at this case. Okay, Deuteronomy 17:17 is given some codes for the king here, right? So he, the king, shall not multiply wives to himself. All right, so let's take a look at this. Okay, so first of all, what about the rest of us schmucks? Okay, since it's pointedly talking about the king here, to me it just seems obvious that it's presupposing a polygynous society, and the rest of us are, not constrained by this at all. But, I mean, does it really prohibit polygyny? Okay, context. Let's double-click here and see what the context is. Okay, the verse right before it is, but he shall not multiply horses to himself, neither shall he multiply wives to himself. Okay, I mean, does this mean that the king can't have more than one horse? I mean, a peasant farmer can have two horses, so he can yoke them together to plow his field. Why would there be any prohibition on two or three horses? Obviously what's talking about here is taking things to excess, and this is exactly what God was talking to David about. He says, it's okay to have multiple wives, but you took it too far. You killed somebody and took their wife. Okay, so everything in proportion here, okay? If it really was talking about monogamy, I mean, why not just say husband of one wife, just like it says in 1 Timothy 3:2. Speaking of which, okay, now this brings up something interesting, okay? So in my last video, okay, I made a following statement. I said I couldn't find any positive statement for heterosexual monogamy in the Bible. And I had a good reason for not being able to find it. Good in big quotes here. Okay, because heterosexual monogamy was the form of marriage practiced in empires. And the Old Testament was finished before the empires arose. So I said, yeah, of course I'm not going to be able to find it because it's over. But what about the New Testament? Duh. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to my table here for a minute, okay? So my thesis, let's consider my thesis as, let's say, a scientific theory that we're testing. Okay, what's the thesis? The thesis is every society has a different form of marriage, and each one of those forms of marriage of the society is positively affirmed by God as something you should do. Okay, that's the thesis. So I've filled out the table so far, and if the theory is correct, okay, now my blunder actually gives us a perfect way to test this theory, okay? My blunder was I only formulated this theory on the basis of the Old Testament. So if the theory is true, it should explain the New Testament too. I mean, just like, predicting laws of nature of anything else, right? So it's like, okay, let's see. Okay, so basically what I'm predicting is during the empire, the parts of the Bible that were written during the empire should change the laws again and should actually endorse heterosexual monogamy. I couldn't think of anything, but ding, 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 ding. Y'all's did. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Veritas. Okay, what does 1 Timothy 3:2 say? Okay, now an overseer, some translations have bishop here or elder. Now an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of but one wife, temperate, yada yada. Okay, and further down it says, let the deacons be husbands of one wife. Okay, great. Theory confirmed. Okay, just like the theory predicts, okay, we should find the laws of marriage changing again. We should find God endorsing the form of marriage that's found in that one. Theory confirmed. Yeah, almost. Okay, what about the rest of his schmucks? Okay, you can read it this way, right? Okay, it's talking about overseers and deacons. This is implicit evidence that at least some, probably a very small minority, but there were at least some early Christians who had multiple wives. And notice, Paul isn't saying kick them out of the church. Okay, Paul had no trouble in Corinthians saying people who are committing incest, kick them out of the church. Okay, so Paul is not shy when it comes to sexual transgressions here. But Paul doesn't say anybody who is not the husband of one wife, kick him out of the church. He's just saying, okay, they can't be deacons and they can't be bishops or they can't be overseers, right? So, it's a little bit weaker than what I'd like, but I'm going to go with it, okay? It definitely indicates if you have heterosexual monogamy, you're on a higher spiritual level, okay? So I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to fill in the last copy of my my table here. So I'm actually very proud of this table, okay? And, I couldn't have done it without you, Veritas. Thanks so much. Okay, so here it is. Okay, here it is, all these different societies in the Bible. And here are texts which positively endorse that form of marriage that's found in it. Okay,